In this morning's lesson, we talked about adding and subtracting fractions, and we did some practice with that, and then you did some practice with a partner. So for this afternoon's lesson, we're going to continue building on that, and this time we're going to talk a little bit about adding and subtracting mixed numbers. So there's a couple of things that I'd like you to do first. On your desk with an expo marker or with a scrap piece of paper, I'd like you to try these 3 practice problems. This is just review from this morning, what we learned about finding the least common denominator and adding fractions when they have like denominators. So if you want to pause this video, take a few minutes to solve those 3 problems, get a final answer in simplest form, and then continue watching the video and double check your answers. So if you're continuing to watch, that means you've completed these 1, 2, and 3 practice problems. We're going to go over them together, and I want you to check your work and see if you got them correct. So let's see, for number 1, 4/5 plus 8/9. So the first thing I'm going to do whenever I'm adding fractions is I'm going to look at my denominators and see if they are alike. It looks like I have unhappy denominators. So I need to go over here, and I'm going to list the denominators or the factors of both 5 and 9, and I'm going to see if I can find a common denominator, the smallest denominator possible between 5 and 9. So I'm going to start with 5, make my font a little bit smaller here, and 5s I think are pretty simple. I'm just going to count up by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Now I could continue going 45, 50, ... And I could continue going because 5s I think are pretty simple, and I can continue counting on and on and on. That should be good. I think if I list anywhere from 5 to 10 numbers, that should help me find my common denominator. Now 9s are a little bit trickier, so it might take you a little bit longer to list the denominators. But I have 9, 9 plus 9 is 18, 9 plus 18 is 27, 27 plus 9 is 36. I have 45. And I'm going to keep going until I find a matching number that's both in the 5s and in my 9s. So if I stop here, I actually just found my common denominator. It looks like 45 is my least common denominator, which seems like a large number, but we're going to change 4/5 into a denominator of 45, and we're going to change 8/9 into a denominator of 45. So we need to find a multiplier that gets us both of these numbers. I can count through all of my numbers, or I can just use mental math. To double check my answers, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, starting with 5. So my multiplier is 9. That gets me 45, and I need to multiply by 9 on the top. So 9 times 4 is 36. Now I'm going to do the same thing with converting 9 into 45. How many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. By my denominator and my numerator, 8 times 5 is 40. So now I'm going to add 36 45ths plus 40 45ths equals 76 45ths. Now that's an improper fraction because my top is higher than my bottom. So if I convert this to a mixed number, 45 can only go into 76 one time. So then I subtract 76 minus 45. 31 is my remainder. So my answer is 1 31 45ths. That is quite the answer for number 1. If you got this correct all the way down to the mixed number, that is extremely impressive. If you got it incorrect, that is okay, because that was a tough one. So that's for number 1. Number 2, let's take a look at that next. Number 2, sorry. Number 2 is 3/10 plus 2/5. Now remember, at any time, if I already know the least common denominator and I don't need to list all of them, then I can solve this. But if you don't know what the answer is, or you don't know what the least common denominator is, I would make your list over here of 5 and 10. So I'm going to list my 5, 10. If you look at that, I already hit 10, which is already the denominator of my one fraction. So I can actually stop there and find 10 as my common denominator. So 3/10, I keep it that way. 2/5, I need to find my multiplier to get me to 10. I know 5 times 2 is 10. I know 2 times 2 is 10. So that gives me 4/10. 3/10 plus 4/10 equals 7/10, and that's what you should have had for number 2. So great job if you had that question correct. Now let's try number 3, 1/6 plus 3/20. I'm going to look at my denominator. My denominators are unhappy, unfortunately. So I need to list my denominators for 6 and for 20. I'm going to start with 20 this time, actually, because I know 20 is much better than 6's. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, ... Now I'm going to do my 6's. When I find a common denominator, I'm going to stop. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, still haven't found it yet, 36, 42, 48, still no match, 54, 60, oh, I found my matching, 60 and 60. That is my common denominator. So I need to change 1/6 and 3/20 to both have 1/60, or to have 60th. So I'm going to multiply to get 60 for each of these. I need to find my multiplier. 6 times what gets me 60? I know it's 10. I could also go over here and I could count how many times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, ignore that. And then I need to multiply that by my top. Whoops. Times 10. That gets me 10/60. 3 and 20. 20 times 3 gets me 60. 3 times 3 gets me 9. So I'm taking 10/60 plus 9/60, which equals 19/60. I cannot simplify. That is my final answer, 19/60. Sorry, that was a little bit crazy there for a little bit. So that is for your practice. It took a little while, and that's okay. But we're going to move into talking about adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Now, we're going to continue reviewing this next week, so don't worry if you don't get it today. But there are 3 things you need to remember. First, focus on just the fraction. Okay? Ignore the whole number and ask yourself the question, are the denominators the same? Your next goal is going to be to find your least common denominator, like we did, list the common denominators. Then subtract your fractions first, and then subtract your whole number. So those are 3 steps for adding and subtracting mixed numbers. So here we go. Let's try some together. So I want you to try these questions either on paper or on your desk. Go along with me as I go through them. So I see a mixed number first, and I'm going to rewrite this to make this look a little bit better here. 2 3/8 minus 1 1/4. Okay. So I'm only going to focus on my fraction. That's my first step. Just like before, I want to find a common denominator. My denominators are not happy, so I could go over here and list my denominators for 4 and 8. But if you're good with your multiplication facts, we know that 4 goes into 8 2 times. So I could easily change 4 to 8. So I could list 4, 8, and then I find my common denominator, or if I just know it in my head, I multiply by 2 at top and bottom. So this now becomes 2 8s. Now it's a happy denominator. So my second step, if I look back here, is to, subtract my fractions first. So let's subtract 3 8 minus 2 8, which is 1 8, and then I'm going to subtract my whole number. 2 minus 1 is 1, and that is my final answer, 1 1/8. Not too bad, huh? Let's try one with addition. And you can do it with me, or you can work ahead of me and see if you get it correct. It's up to you and how you feel about this. So let's try this next one. I see 4 1/5 plus 2 1/3. Okay, step number 1, focus on the fractions. My denominators are unhappy because it's a 5 and a 3. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to list my denominators. I like 5s first because they're really easy. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to do my 3s. Those aren't too bad. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Oh, I found my least common denominator, which is 15. So I need to convert these into denominators of 15. I need to multiply top and bottom. 3 times 5 gets me 15, which means 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15, and 1 times 3 is 3. This is very messy, but if I look here, 3 15ths and 5 15ths, I want to add those first. So 5 plus 3 is 8. Keep my denominator the same. Happy, happy, happy. But I'm not done. I need to add my whole numbers now. 4 and 2, which equals 6. So your answer should be 6 8/15. Alrighty. Now, sometimes with subtracting, you may have to actually borrow. It may not subtract so nicely. So let me show you how we would do that. I would take 7 5/6 and set it up like normal. I would focus on my fractions first. My denominators are unhappy, so I need to find my common denominator. If I listed all of my numbers, I would find that 24 is my common denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 4 to get 24, multiply by 6 to get 24, which means I need to do that top and bottom, which gets me 20 minus 6 24ths, which gets me 14 24ths. 7 minus 3 is 4. So that one worked out nicely. We didn't have to borrow for that one. Okay? But we may have to borrow for our second question. So let's try this next one. 4 1/3 minus 2 7/15. I would multiply by 5 to get my common denominator, and I see that 5/15 minus 7/15, I can't subtract 5 and 7. So I have to borrow from my 3. And because I borrowed from here, I need to add the equivalent of one whole number that uses the denominator 15. So 15 plus 5 is 20/15 minus 7/15, which gets me 13/15. 3 minus 2 is 1, and 1 13/15 would be my final answer. Now, we're going to practice this a lot more next week, and you're going to do some practice at home as well. So don't get stressed out if you don't know this. This is just a preview of it, and do some practice and review before we practice a little bit more together. So great job.